Good evening, everybody. Welcome to the Mountaineer Locker Room Then and Now. I'm Greg Crist, your host for the show. And as always, we feel like we have a wonderful slate of guests tonight, a show I think most of you will enjoy. And we'll definitely look at the then and the now. And we got a lot of topics to cover. And I think it's going to be a fun show, just like last week was, kind of along the same theme. We've got some family members, coaches, and players that played back then during those coaches' tenure, and we're looking forward to talking to all those guys. Some of them you'll recognize from past shows, some of them you may not. But nonetheless, I think you'll enjoy the show. It's an excellent lineup of guests, and I think we're going to have a lot of fun tonight. I want to mention to everyone, as we often do right here at the beginning of the show, make sure that you like and subscribe on our YouTube channel. That is what helps us keep doing this. So make sure you give it a subscribe and pass that along to your friends and neighbors and relatives, and let them know that they can go on and subscribe as well. They don't necessarily have to watch, but it's nice if they subscribe. That helps us tremendously. We've got some special guests here. I think you're going to enjoy hearing from these folks. It's going to be a lot of fun. I look forward to going back and just sitting back and watching Frank do his thing. He's a lot better at this than I am, so I'll just kick back here and enjoy it. Frank, I'm going to turn it over to you, and we'll get into a little bit of football.
So what I'm going to do right now is bring in my sidekick, Mickey Plumley, who played for Coach Carlen. Actually, he was the only head coach during the tenure that you were playing for the Mountaineers, Mickey. Is that true?
That is correct. It was a close call, though, Frank. I don't know if you want me to get into this story now, but actually,
tell that story, then we'll bring Mollianne and Ken in.
Actually, I was recruited at WVU in 1966 by Gene Corum, who the week after he offered me and I accepted the scholarship offer, they let Gene go. And a lot of people in Southern West Virginia said perhaps I was the reason why they let him go. I'm not sure about that. He did offer me the scholarship, and then lo and behold, when I get to Morgantown that August, he's gone, and Jim Carlen is the new man on the scene. And what a great guy. We'll get into it in the conversation here today, but thoroughly enjoyed playing for the man. Had a big impact on my life as a young person maturing in life, and just really a great coach, a great human, a good Christian man, taught us a lot of great Christian principles, he as well as Bobby Bowden. So it was more than not just instilling how to be a great football player from Coach Carlen's perspective. He was interested in the well-rounded individual and what was going to happen to you once you graduated and got out in the real world. So look forward to the opportunity to talk about him tonight with some people who know him very, very well.
Very good. Let me bring them in right now. First, we're going to bring in Mollianne Carlen Elliot, the daughter of Coach Carlen, and we're also going to bring in one of the players who played for Coach Carlen, and that is Ken Juskowich. And we're so pleased that you are with us tonight to talk about a very special person and also a great coach. Mollianne, welcome.
Thank you. I so appreciate you having me on. I'm incredibly grateful for you, Frank, because just briefly, my dad's been up for the NCAA Hall of Fame coach position now for several years. And, the more years go on, it's more difficult because so many new coaches come in, and they only pick 2 a year. So when you contacted me and you were really doing your homework and kind of telling the story, it made such a difference, not only to me personally, and I have a brother and sister as well, so much to them too. But anyway, so you were such a great surprise to me.
Well, thank you very much. It really is an honor. And you and I have talked many times, and that is how important it is to honor those who came before that set the foundation for what came after. I'm a great believer that we stand on the shoulders of others. And so I think, especially for the show, since we're in the off season, let's focus. During the season, we focus a lot on the now, and off season, we want to focus on the then. So, and you were obviously an important person in your father's life, and now are a very important actor in the effort we're all behind, and that is getting Jim Carlen into the College Football Hall of Fame. And let's, Ken, I mean, you were very close to Mollianne and the Carlen family, not only as a player but afterwards. And you've got, I think, an important story in terms of those linkages, in terms of the role that your wife played with Mollianne. There was a relationship maybe there that was stronger than it was for you at the beginning. But welcome and thanks for being here.
Thank you, Frank. Coach Carlen meant a lot to both me and my wife. Meant a lot to our family. I mean, we were friends after Coach Carlen left here, Texas Tech, and then to South Carolina. We visited him down in South Carolina, Columbia. We also visited down in Hilton Head, played together. The thing I was talking about earlier, I guess, Mollianne, you were probably like 2 years old when you were in Morgantown, right? Or less than that?
I was 3 when we moved there.
I had 3 or 4 before. And it just so happened I was a walk-on. Coach Carlen gave me a scholarship after about 30 minutes, 40 minutes of kicking in front of him. I kicked in front of Coach Bowden and Coach Carlen, and he told me after I was done, I don't know where you live, son, but I want you to move into the dormitory stuff. You're going to be on scholarship, which was very unusual since I never played a football game in my life. I was a soccer player. But once I was on the team and Coach Carlen found out I was dating this Judy Skunda from Weirton, West Virginia, it happened to be my babysitter. Coach Carlen lectured me on the fact that I get to take care of. We stayed in touch for a long time, and very instrumental in a lot of ways, and changed. And by the way, I did take care of his babysitter. We were married for 52 years. So,
yeah, I told Ken growing up, I thought Ken's name was Ken and Judy Juskowich. It all just they were one person to me. Delightful.
And there she is.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks.
So
that's one last picture, Judy. Thank you. So Coach Carlen, everybody you talk about Coach Carlen, and you talk about a CEO type, a leader, dedicated. He never put himself above the players. I mean, it was always about the players. It was always about getting them educated, them through college, getting them to church on Sundays. As I think we talked before, we went to different denominations every Sunday. But what you are, if you're Catholic, whatever, we're going to go to this church on Sunday. If you want to go again, you can get on in the day. And he always knew what we were doing. He always knew great. He had a hotline. And like I said in the book, The Band of Brothers, when he called you in and you did something wrong, you might as well just spill the beans, because he had all the facts.
Well, that's true as his child too.
He tell him everything and not lie to him. So you knew not to lie to him. And I don't know what our percentage of graduation was his last year, but it was phenomenal from the first year that he took it over until we graduated. The classes graduated. The last class, I guess, was Mickey, 69 or 1970 class, right?
Yeah, we actually graduated in May of 1970, but the last team, of course, was the Peach Bowl championship team that night in Atlanta, Georgia, when we took down South Carolina. And of course, Frank talks a lot about that in his book, Band of Brothers, Then and Now. I've got one quick story I'll tell about Coach Carlen, my first encounter with the man. As I mentioned earlier in the show here, I'd actually been recruited by a different head coach who had gotten fired by the university. So I got up to Morgantown, and I had a meeting with Coach Carlen. Had never met the man before in my life, and he brought me into his office, and he sat me down. He said, "Son," he said, "I want to tell you something." He said, "I didn't sign you. I did not recruit you." He said, "I came out of the South, And, down in Southern style football in the SEC, he said, we put a lot of emphasis on speed and quickness. And he said, I think you're too big. Now, Frank, I was 6'4", 235 pounds. Now, compared to today's offensive tackle, you can probably add 100 pounds to that. But at 235, I was one of the biggest, if not the biggest guys on the team. And he said, Plumley, he said, I don't think you'll ever play a down for me. But he said, I am going to honor your scholarship because it was granted to you for your accomplishments in high school. And I'm going to honor that commitment that the university has made to you. Well, I walked out of his office talking underneath my breath. And I'm thinking, I'll show this guy one way or the other. And little did I realize at the time that was a motivational speech on his behalf, just to get me psyched up for the new era. And then the era of football did change with him coming in with the class of 1966. But I thought to myself, I'll show you. I'm going to start every single game. And I was fortunate enough to start my sophomore, junior, and senior year. And that probably wouldn't have happened if he had not had that motivational talk with me on day one.
Yeah. Mickey, your comments lead right into this graphic here. For those who don't know Jim Carlen, and it's Carlen with an E, not an I, he had a great football career. There's Jim up in the upper left. Jim passed away about 10 years ago. He played at Georgia Tech under the great Bobby Dodd, just a phenomenal name in college football history. WVU was his first head coaching job. A lot of people don't know that it was not the first head coaching job for Bobby Bowden. He had been at two other schools, not major schools, but you got to really thank the athletic director at the time, Brown, for basically not only having faith in him, but also knowing that he learned under a master in Bobby Dodd. So WVU was his first coaching job. He coached for 4 seasons, 25-13-3. When you compare that to the record at WVU earlier in the decade, about 50-50. And remember, we were playing in the Southern Conference in those days, and those were almost all wins. And then won the Peach Bowl in 69. Then he went on to Texas Tech from 70 to 74, went 37-20-2. And again, if you go back in history, this is the thing Mollianne and I talked about yesterday. And that is there are a lot of coaches who have success that go from one successful program and then get handed the baton at another successful program. Not Jim Carlen. He came into WVU that needed to be turned around. He went 25-13. Texas Tech was down. He went to Lubbock, turned them around, 4 bowl games, 137, 2-time. In those days, they were in the Southwest Conference, 2-time coach of the year in his conference. And then he went to South Carolina, again, a team that was down, a program that was down. And he went there not only as head football coach between 75 and 81, but also, was their athletic director, won 35 games and was in 3 bowl games, an overall head coaching record of 109, 69, and 6. And again, in all 3 schools in a turnaround mode, nobody handed him anything. And he basically built programs. And so that just gives you an idea. And I love this picture here. Some of you, I think, have seen this picture. There are some real greats there. And a lot of people would say, well, not Frank Signetti, who followed Bobby Bowden, but Frank Signetti is in the College Hall of Fame for the work he did primarily at Indiana University of Pennsylvania. Of course, Bobby's in there. And we want to get, obviously, we want to get Jim in there too. So, just a great person who had a great career. And let me also too, while I'm at it, let me see if I can bring that up. Let me see if I have it here. Oh, here it is. This guy named Ken Juskowich did a great job. Look at that. And that was it for, again, I'm a history buff. Ken laughs, and so does Mollianne. That was in newspapers all over the Midwest, the East, even in New York, the day after the Pitt West Virginia game, which was played on October 7th. So the headlines on Sunday were Jusko 15, Pitt 0, and you can look. He had all those field goals, and I'm laughing because Mickey Plumley is part of this story too. But if you look at the total, right, Mickey? If you look at the total yards on the day, look at that. Pitt had 25 yards, minus 20 total, minus 21 rushing, 4 for 19 passing. We could have done better, even at our age, I think, than those guys did that day. But that was well. Tell the story, Mickey. I mean, Ken should have had number 6.
Well, he should have, yeah. And I hate to relate this story, but it's true. And I got to stand up to it. Late in that game, when we were ahead 15-0, the school record for number of field goals kicked in the game was 5. That was held by Frank Nestor, I believe. But anyway,
I held it before that with Villanova.
Oh, that's right. So, but late in the game, we got down around the 25-yard line or so. Time was running out, and Coach Carlen called timeout. And there were a few seconds left on the clock, and he sent Ken and I in. I was a snapper on field goals and punts, and Ken actually had a chance to set the all-time record that would never, ever be broken of kicking 6 field goals. And the headline should have said Juskowich 18, Pitt nothing. However, when I went to snap the ball back to the placeholder, I caught the nose of the football in the turf, and the ball rolled over end over end. The placeholder had to fall on it for a fumble recovery, and Ken never had the opportunity to kick that 6 field goal. So,
yeah.
Every time I see him in Morgantown, I have to buy him a libation to make up for that.
That's funny. I have my son. I have 4 kids and a daughter and 3 sons, and one of mine did play college football. He played at Air Force, and he's a long snapper. So,
oh, okay.
Yeah, so we're the special teams. We're all about special teams here.
Yeah. Well, we had John Antonic, who is works at West Virginia and is really an historian, just a great. He embraces history, writes about it, does a great job for the university. His material, stories, and columns are always online. You can read. And we had him on as a guest a couple of weeks ago. And obviously, we didn't script anything for him. But I was telling this to Mollianne the other day. There are just a few names of coaches in WVU history that you can say, without them, would we be on the map we are today? And he mentioned Jim Carlen. He really believes that was the beginning of the modern era. And we were also talking about the fact it's very difficult to separate, the Bowden era, because Bobby was brought in by Jim to be his offensive coordinator. In a few minutes, we're going to talk with Richard Bell, who was Jim Carlen's defensive coordinator, and then followed Jim to Texas Tech and South Carolina, and then followed Jim as head coach at South Carolina. But if you do that and think about that period of 1966 to 1975, that laid a foundation that really, I think Pappy Lewis started in the 50s, but then went through a dip a bit. And then we had, after that, we brought, obviously, we had Don Nealon and Rich Rod, et cetera, and Bill Stewart. And you just see the momentum. But I often think, and see how you folks think about this, if Red Brown had not brought Jim Carlen from Georgia Tech and Bobby Bowden following him from, a lot of people don't know this, from Florida State, because Bobby was at Florida State, I think the wide receivers coach, and then went back to Florida State as the head coach after WVU. Would we be where we are today? What do you all think?
Well, Frank, I'll tell you my personal opinion on that. Coach Carlen, unbeknownst to a lot of people, he was a real catalyst beyond just being a great head football coach. He lobbied hard with the athletic director, Red Brown, to get us out of the old Southern Conference. His mission when he came to Morgantown, I believe, was to take West Virginia from a regional known power in the NCAA environment to a nationally known football team. So he constantly lobbied with the athletic director and the Board of Regents to get West Virginia out of the old Southern Conference. And he was successful in doing so. we became an independent. And when we became an independent, we picked up a lot of what became Big East competitor schools later, as well as schools like Indiana and a few others that we picked up on the schedule post, when I graduated in '69. But I don't think that impetus may not have happened if Coach Carlen had not arrived on the scene when he did.
Yeah.
He also negotiated for Route 79 going through the state of West Virginia. Yeah. He got
the recruiting thing is, he said, if there aren't good highways, I can't recruit.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's so interesting. Most kids don't really know a lot about their dads' careers, really, or stories from them. And it's really been in the last 10 to 15 years that just through this whole Hall of Fame scenario that I have heard so many stories and I've kind of pieced together. But interestingly enough, and I'm having kids that have gone through the sports world, they're all adults now, but we were always looking for coaches that just love the game. Like, I didn't want the daddy ball thing. I just wanted, like, give me a coach that loves the game, and you've got a good coach. He's going to be good with kids. And it's interesting because Dad, unbeknownst to most people, he actually went to work. He was a high school coach in his hometown. He was a graduate assistant at Georgia Tech, and then he went to Wiesbaden in the Air Force, and he coached football over there. And he socked away. My dad was very financially very tight, and he socked away so much money in Wiesbaden because, of course, he's living in quarters and all the things. And so when he came back, he really wanted to coach for Bobby Dodd, and he told him he would coach for him for the first season for free. So he had his own coaching career. And then I believe 4 years later, he was the defensive coordinator, basically. So he kind of funded himself. I don't know that he owned that to many people, but anyway, but I love what he was so drawn to West Virginia. I love what so this is probably one of the few things I have from West Virginia. It's the press guide from that first year. And I love what he says here. He just says, I came to West Virginia with a dedication to giving the people of the state fast-paced, aggressive, and appealing brand of football. I can't say how long it'll take to get a winner. We've lost 2/3 of the starting players on last year's squad. I do say we'll get up and go after people. We want to play a brand of football to be proud of, win or lose. We're looking for boys who can move their feet and will hit. The 22 best athletes will play regardless of previous positions or experience. Quite a few will learn more than one position. Our starting lineups will average less than 200 pounds. There you go, Mickey. Per man, but they will hit. That helped attract me to West Virginia. These are rugged boys, unafraid of hard work. And every time I heard my dad talk about West Virginia, that is what he said. Best people on the planet are in West Virginia. He said they're salt of the earth and they're rugged people. And they know they've got grit. And so I think my dad thoroughly enjoyed his time at West Virginia. My mom, my dad, it says he grew up in the hills of Tennessee. Well, P.S., the hills of Tennessee don't compare to the hills of West Virginia. I think that's how he sold my mom on it. But she was like, "Law, these were real mountains. These weren't hills."
And there's your mom there.
Yes, and my mom. Yes. So anyway, interestingly enough, Coach Evans, one of the other coaches who came, he wasn't there at the beginning, but all these coaches stayed with my dad. We were like a big family that went from, he didn't have a lot of shifts in his coaching staff unless one went, like Bobby Dowden and Hayden Buckley went with him to stay at West Virginia. But for the most part, we moved as a family. Coach Bell and his kids, Coach Evans and his kids, Coach Fligg and his kids. We went, Dad's whole career, we had a really consistent coaching staff, and all the kids were about the same age. So we're still really close. We're like siblings.
Yeah.
But, I remember Coach Evans, he is passed away now, and he talking about the first year they needed a practice field. And y'all probably remember this, and you may have been a part of it. And correct me if I've got the details wrong, but evidently for the summer, Coach Evans, I think his salary was like, it was crazy, $7,000 a year, maybe. But he paid him for the summer to get the practice field done. And I think he hired several players. Of course, you can't do that now, but that didn't have jobs to go home to. And so it was actually players that sodded and did the practice field. Because
I can attest to that, Mollianne. I was one of those
you were
employees. I was, yeah, myself and John Hale, who was on our team as well, a great defensive end, as well as others. But what happened was that was the year they put AstroTurf in on old Mountaineer Stadium. So we actually were hired to go run sod cutting machines, cut up the sod, roll it up into 9-foot segments, load it up on a truck, take it out to an old field on Evansdale campus and relay it to build the practice field on. And it was a way not only to, as a matter of fact, John and I were both married. We got married midway through our junior year. And it was a way to help us support our families. It was all above board and legal. You know, back in the day, you could do something like that. But it was also a way to keep us in great shape because it was hard work on that.
I also there with Roy Stanley, one of our recruits from Georgia. But Mollianne, I don't ever remember getting paid.
Sorry, Ken.
With interest.
I was a family babysitter and I didn't get paid either.
Yeah.
After Judy moved along.
Yeah. The major reason I wanted to have that photo up that's up right now is that, everything I heard, I did not know Jim Carlen. I knew Bobby, but not Jim, was that he was a CEO type and he really brought really good people to surround him. And as Mollianne said, they stuck with him, and we'll talk with Richard in a few minutes. He left as DC here and became DC at Texas Tech. But he was great in public relations, as Ken said, not only with the legislature, but also with fans. In fact, I think I heard at one point he went to, one high school in southern West Virginia, maybe 3 years in a row, to speak at their banquet. And so he got the fans revved up about the importance of WVU football, what it could be. But as you guys know, referring to Ken and Mickey, academics didn't take a back seat with Jim Carlen. He focused on that, and that was a major, major issue for him. And so I thought this photo here was perfect of Jim behind a microphone. What I'm going to do right now is I'm going to bring Greg back on. I'm going to go to the back room so I can call Coach Bell from Georgia, the defensive coordinator, and we're going to have a conversation with Coach Bell. So let me bring you back on the stage, Greg, and let me take myself away.
All right. All right.
It's interesting when people say that Dad was such a fan. People either loved him or couldn't stand him. That's the truth of it. He was very no nonsense. He would have been a terrible politician, but he could definitely get what he wanted because he was relentless.
That's from the side of a coach.
Yeah,
that's the way it is. They either hate you or love you.
Yeah.
I've been through that myself.
That's right.
First of all, Mollianne, I know you must be thrilling for you to hear these stories and hear folks talk about your dad. And I don't know anybody's. Well, I know Mickey's old, but I'm a lot younger than Mickey. But I didn't know anything about your dad. I knew the name, obviously. But through Frank's book, through getting to know these guys, Mickey and I've heard so many stories and good stories and so much interesting stuff about your father. I know you must be thrilled. And I want to ask Ken, you and Mickey, I'll let you go first. Listen to the conversations and him, what she read in the press guide there, mentioning that he wouldn't have a player alignment over 200 pounds. Do you feel like he was, and you guys knew him and played for him, ahead of his time? Because, if you look at the college game today, now granted, these guys are bigger, but I think that's just through, a natural evolution. They're going to be bigger and faster and stronger. But a lot of the college programs focus on smaller, quicker linemen. And that's something that's just happened here in the last, 10 years or so. But sounds to me like he may be just a little ahead of his time with this mode of thinking. Mickey, what's your thoughts on that?
Well, I think definitely. I think he was, Greg. No question about it. Not only from that perspective of the type of player he recruited, but also, as Ken mentioned, this CEO aspect of the job. I mean, he saw himself not only as a head football coach, but more importantly, as a chief executive officer that had to get things done at the university. I mean, he basically, you seldom saw him during a practice. I mean, he would be there at the beginning of the practice. I'm sure he was watching us from somewhere, but he turned the coaching duties over to the men that he hired because he had complete confidence in Bobby Bowden and Richard Bell and the other players that he had, Jack Fligg, my offensive line coach, to mention just one of them. But he took that standoffish approach as a head coach, let his assistant coaches do their job, and then he was there to provide the leadership and the motivation to get the job done.
Ken, what's your thoughts?
No, I agree 100%. I think, a good coach, he always said that he always wanted to hire an offensive coordinator that was better than him, a defensive coordinator that was better than him. And I sometimes see coaches that aren't successful, they don't hire people that are better than at those positions because they're threatened. They take their job. Coach Carlen wasn't threatened by anybody taking his job because he knew what he wanted to accomplish. He was in control, and he hired really good people all the time. Like Tom Kuser said, I was reading about Tom when talking to Tom Kuser earlier. He was our center and our lineman. He said Coach Carlen had the knack of when someone left, he brought someone just as good or on the same level. When Coach Inman left, he brought Coach Bell in. And I mean, it just was a circle of bringing in the best people for us. And we had great coaches and a great leader.
Yep. Again, I can attest to that. I know. When I was coaching in high school, this is a different college, obviously, but whenever I had to have an assistant coach, I always, of course, got to sit on in interviews and would get to ask questions. And one of the questions I would always ask, do you have aspirations of being a head coach someday? And I wanted them to say yes, because I wanted the person that was going to work toward, bettering themselves and work hard to get that head coaching job. And I always thought that was important. So I can see, I understand the importance of hiring people, that you think are better than you or as, at least equally as good. And I think looking at his coaching hires, when you went back and I've looked at his career, you see some really good coaches in that coaching tree. And I think that's a mark of an excellent coach when you see that coaching tree branch out into all these different areas. Frank is back with us. And I think, Frank, if I'm not mistaken, you have Richard Bell on the line to talk to us a little bit. So I'm going to turn it back over to you and kick back and listen.
Well, thank you very much, Greg. And all of you know Richard Bell. He often says that Jim Carlen was a great coach, but a better person. And those words apply to Richard Bell. And for those of you who are not familiar, Richard, I'm showing this on the screen now. You can't see it. Richard, Coach Bell is on the phone, but look at that pedigree. He was the defensive coordinator at WVU, then at Texas Tech, then at South Carolina, then succeeded Jim Carlen as USC head coach. But he also coached at VMI, Georgia Tech, was defensive coordinator at Duke, Air Force, East Carolina, UGA, Navy, and also was a high school coach. And as I understand, Richard, let me know, you were coaching high school in your mid to late 70s. Is that true?
Yeah, I made up my mind. I wasn't ready to get out of coaching, so I made up my mind I was going to coach until I was 80 years old, and I made that goal. And but I had to do it on the high school level. But I really enjoyed that, and because coaching is coaching and taking young men and shaping them, molding them into people that maybe they think they can't be, but you just get them to motivate themselves and just have a great desire to achieve. And they find out that, hey, I'm better than I think I am. And if you can get them along that line, you made a great impact on that young man's life, and also you've made a tremendous impact on the football team by making those guys better and working together and everything. So, hey, the only thing I can say, with Jim is he was the best ever and everything. And I won't go into what I think about should have happened to him, but anyway, tremendous knowledge, not only of the game, but just of how to motivate people. And I did hear the Mark earlier, that he was never, well, it was said he was always at practice. Maybe not see him, but he was there, and he had a great grasp of what we were doing because we had sat down earlier in the day and gone over everything, and so he knew what was supposed to be done. And so when he was there, he was immediately checking and being sure that we were following through on the plan that we had set that day. But I could go on. You'd have to ask me, not ask me, but yeah, I could go on with nothing but praise for who he was on the football field and who he was as a man. And he just, I tell you what, he really, all of us that coached with him, Dick Inman, who was there, preceded me, and Bobby Bowden. I talked with Bowden when we had that reunion back in the 69 and everything, but all of us, Jack Flake, hey, we were better people because we worked with Jim Carlen. And so it was, and he did. The guys that he had on the staff he wanted us to make decisions. He told us, hey, I don't want you to be sitting here and just letting me make all the decisions. I can do that, but I want you guys to be very much a part of it and also encourage and upbeat and make these young men into better men, which he was stressing all the time. So anyway, I'll let you in. I won't keep on going. I could just keep on going, but if anybody has any questions they want to ask me, feel free to ask.
Yeah. Well, one of the things I was going to say, Coach, I'm going to put a graphic up here. It was not just working, helping players become better persons, but he had great players to work with. You did too, and I'm showing here the Heisman Trophy ceremony when George Rogers at South Carolina won the Heisman, and there's Jim Carlen. You can't see it, but Jim Carlen there is on the screen. And another person who was a big fan is of Jim Carlen, who just spoke volumes when Jim passed away. I'm showing a picture of Steve Spurrier, who just went out of his way. Again, I think another person who understands the importance of history and the people who went before. And Steve basically said, South Carolina, I'm on the shoulders of Jim Carlen. And I remember reading that testimony he gave after Jim passed away, and you could tell it was from the heart.
So I have to say a couple things about Coach Bill.
Go ahead.
First of all, my mom never says his name without the tagline, "He's the finest man I know." And that's really true of Richard Bell.
Yes.
Amen.
I think you talked about it in the book, but I was privileged to be witness to one of the most poignant things in my whole life. My dad he was in care. He had dementia pretty severely, and he was on morphine. And so Coach Bell drove from Georgia to South Carolina. And so they had lowered my dad's bed to about, I don't know, a foot off the ground. I guess they do that, and so that if he had rolled over, it didn't have far to fall. But Coach Bell got down on his one knee and literally for probably 2 to 2.5 hours. Now I'm holding my dad's hand, and I kept saying, Dad, if you're aware, if you can hear what Coach Bell is saying, just squeeze my hand. And he would. But he wasn't responding at all. But Coach Bell, like a good coach, reminded my dad of story after story after story of who my dad was, what an impact he'd had in people's lives. It was the most amazing thing I've ever seen anyone do for someone. Just it literally, and my dad died about 24 hours later.
Wow.
It was incredibly kind. And I do happen to know that Coach Bill, he sounds really nice, but if you're messing up, he's going to be in your face. And I know he did that with my dad too, and I'm so thankful. And I think my dad was really grateful too. So anyway.
Yeah.
Frank, I want to just say it, and that happened before if they needed and everything. But Mollianne, you weren't supposed to do that now because you brought tears.
I know, I'm crying too.
I was going to say she brought tears to everybody's eyes.
So
everybody should have a Coach Bill.
But he, you know, as Mollianne knows about her dad, as Kenny knows about her, and everybody that played for him. I mean, there was only one boss on the field, but he was it. So anyway, and when he said jump, we all jumped. And so he just had a perfect feel about just issues on both sides of the ball. You know, you would feel like that, you know, hey, he's just turned it over to Bobby or he's turned it over to me. And right there when I thought maybe he had turned it over to me, he's on the headset saying, hey, do this. Because it's a better idea than you're having right now, and we'll have a better chance to win the game. And sure enough, he wasn't wrong and everything. And so anyway, he coached us as coaches, and he got on us as players and everything. But we all just had a great feel, and that great feel reached over to our players. I just they were in all the places I stopped. I had some great stops, and I appreciate you naming them all fair. They were very meaningful to me and everything. But I tell you what, I call them kids, but we had there in West Virginia. They just played. They played hard. They played. And they left it on the field. And I mean to tell you, they just were committed and dedicated in every way. And so we pushed them and everything else. I still, not many people know all the stories, but anyway, when we played South Carolina in the Peace Bowl down there, it had been a beautiful week and workout and everything, but on that particular day, on that Saturday, it just poured down rain. It rained all day and rained into the night and everything. And so we as coaches had gone out on the field, and we were out there talking about the game and how the weather was possibly going to influence it. And then about that time, South Carolina came out on the field. And I noticed as they came out on the field, they were trying to get around all the wet spots and all the puddles and everything. And then our guys came out on the field, and just like a Mountaineer, they just come out and they just diving on the ground and they're just lapping it up. But this is what we came to play for. And there's no way they're going to beat us because we've been tested in this the whole year, and we're going to be able to overcome any type of adversity that has. And mainly the adversity of wet weather and everything. That's not an adversity. That's a plus for us. And so that was a key to the win. And Coach really emphasized that when we went back in. I never will forget. We got back in there, and he walked into the dressing room, and he says, "Man, we got what we wanted, didn't we?" And they're hooping and hollering, "We got the rain," and they just went wild. And I was on the way to the press box at the time, and I said, I told Hayden Buckley as we went up there, and also Bob Brown. I just said to him, looked at him as we went up there. I said, "Hey, we don't know it, but we've already won this game." So anyway, a lot of memories, great memories.
And the thing that I'm thinking is you're saying that, and it just shows you'd never know where life's going to take you. You're out there in 1969 playing the University of South Carolina, and then in a few short years, each of you became the head coach at the University of South Carolina. You never could have imagined it that night, but sometimes it's interesting where the paths of life take us. But yeah, you're absolutely correct. I mean, it's the kind of leadership that we want to see in society, not just in college football and college sports, but everywhere in society. What you're really describing, I think, Coach Bell, is a great connection of the mind, the body, and the spirit. You never can go wrong when those three things are connected. And a lot of us believe that we need that connection tighter in today's college sports. And one of the reasons we want to expose fans and others to the history of WVU football. And so questions from the rest of the folks on the screen.
The one thing.
Go ahead, Ken.
Mollianne said that a lot of players either liked Coach Carlen or they didn't like him. But I can tell you that there's some players that didn't like him when he was here, when he coached him, because he was tough on them, because he molded him in. But I'll tell you what, when we had 3 reunions here in Morgantown, afterwards, the people that didn't like him now loved him because they were successful in life and he helped mold them through those years. I don't ever think a head coach is going to be your best friend. I don't think that works. I think he's got to be somebody that's going to mold you because you're at a young age and get you ready for the next step in your life. And Coach Carlen did that, and his staff. And it's so good to hear from you, Coach Bell.
Mm-hmm.
Coach Bell, right there with him.
Mollianne, you want to?
Oh, I was going to say, that game, wasn't that the game that Coach Bowden completely switched the offense on? Wasn't it the Peach Bowl?
Yes.
I went to did he go to a wishbone? I mean, it was like a complete switch.
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, kind of unheard of in this day and time. I don't think you've ever seen that.
Exactly.
That's pretty awesome. Mickey,
I think
what about
he had
you?
to call Darryl Royal or somebody out in Texas to find out how to do it.
Final thoughts?
Do what?
I was asking Mickey if he had any final thoughts.
Hey, Coach Bell. I just, Frank, I don't know if Coach Bell can hear me or not, but I just wanted to say hello, Coach Bell. This is Mickey Plumley. I haven't seen you since the reunion of the 69 team back in 2019 when you were gracious enough to come up and address us some 50 years later after we played. But I hope you're doing well, Coach, and I got to get your number from Frank here because Wayne Brooks and I are going to come over and take you out to lunch one day, sir.
Well, I appreciate it. I've had some battles with my health. Mainly it's sciatic nerves in my back that have been really hitting me and everything. But I'm overcoming that and getting on it. Marilyn and I have been Marietta, Georgia, and it's really Woodstock outside, but it's right there in Marietta and all. And so I've gotten back on my feet, and I'm also, I don't have any type of hold up. I can walk, I daily walk and get out and do everything anybody else does, but it's really, but we're really blessed and everything. And I think, as you guys talk and everything, I think the emphasis there, but really to get back to it and just emphasize it more than anything else. And then to say it is Jim emphasized the spiritual side of it. And not only just the spiritual side of it and a walk with the Lord and the walk with the Lord Jesus, he also the walk he emphasized to it is it's not always an easy walk, it's a tough walk, and he expected us as coaches and the players that played for him to grow and be the men of God that he felt like that from a biblical standpoint they ought to be. And so anyway, it's just, yeah, Mickey, just good to hear your voice. And yeah, if you and Wayne did that,
we'll get over there to Marietta one day. We're not that far away from you, Coach. Love you, man.
Love y'all. I love y'all.
Love you, Coach Bell.
Thanks, Coach Bell.
All right, it's
a whole bunch. Just love all of you. Thank you for some great years. You know.
Yeah. Thanks, Coach Bell. We appreciate it very much. We'll be talking soon. You take care.
Okay, Frank. Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome.
And Frank, as we get ready to close here, I think I think as you hear coaches like Coach Bell, you listen to players like Mickey and Ken, and then of course Mollianne, to hear the talk and the stories. One of the reasons he done such a great job and was such a great coach and a great person, you see the kind of people he surrounded himself with. And I think these coaches that you talk to, and I've talked to several of them, when they talk about him, it's just pretty much the same thing. He was the man in charge, but he also had an awful big heart and took awful good care of folks. And I think that's a credit to Coach Carlen and the guys that played for him and his family. And I think when you hear these stories, and it's awesome for me to sit back and listen to these stories and hear these guys talk about him and talk about the other things. It's so fun for me. Mickey, as a kid, it's fun for me to sit back and hear all these stories from you guys, and it's really heartwarming and uplifting to hear that. And I've heard so many times that people have said, and all the people I've talked to on my show and interviewed through Frank, all of them say the same thing. He laid the foundation for where we're at today in the Mountaineer football world, and that's a big tribute to him. So awesome job, all of you. We appreciate you so much. Mickey co-hosts with us, so we appreciate your input. Ken, it's nice seeing you and talking to you again. We appreciate you. Always great to hear from you. Mollianne, it was great to meet you, and loved hearing the stories. I think we could have a show, this same cast of folks, and probably do this for an hour or two. I don't think we can do it justice with our 45 minutes here. I think we could do a couple hours with this. But thank you guys so much. It was wonderful, great show, great to listen to. I know the people that listen to the show had to truly enjoy that. That was simply awesome. We appreciate you again. Thank you.